To the latest coming in from the UK. Will Boris Johnson retain his position as the UK Prime Minister, or will the Labour candidate Jeremy Corbyn become the next leader? Just 2 weeks to go for that decision to be made. The latest opinion poll showing that the gap between the Tories and the Labour Party is now narrowing down. The Labour Party is behind by just 11 points. The YouGov poll saying that Tories were at 43%, while the Labour was at 32%. The poll has also predicted a big win for Boris Johnson and 359 seats for his party with a 68-seat majority. And this is over 40 seats more than what the party had won under Johnson's predecessor, Theresa May. The Labour Party is on track to secure 211 seats, losing about 44 constituencies to the Tories. Not just that, the poll says that there was still more than sufficient time for the people to change their minds. That election, of course, is 2 weeks away still on December 12th. Remember, Boris Johnson has pledged to deliver Brexit by the 31st of January if he wins the election. And joining us on the broadcast this minute is our correspondent, Holly Hudson. Holly, it's very interesting, these numbers, and also equally interesting how in 2017, the YouGov poll was the only one that actually came closest to the actual result. So it will be very interesting to see whether or not this time around these numbers prove to be correct.
Yes, certainly proves very interesting reading. Clearly, there's lots of polls that take place before a general election in the run-up to an election. But the reason this one is so significant, as you say, is because it was the only one that accurately predicted the outcome of the 2017 election, when there was a hung parliament and Theresa May was returned a minority. As this poll predicts, the MRP poll for the newspaper The Times, it's a seat-by-seat survey based on the views of 100,000 voters, and it sees that Labour would lose 44 seats to the Tories in their major strongholds, their sort of safe seats, usually their home territory, their bread and butter, and that would deliver Boris Johnson an overwhelming majority of 68. And of course, that's what the Tories, the Conservative Party, are really dreaming of in order for them to be able to slide their Brexit deal through Parliament easily, maybe even before Christmas, but certainly before the deadline of January the 31st. So devastating for Labour and the Liberal Democrats, the Remain supporting party, if this poll is accurate. And that is a big if. There's always big ifs and buts when it comes to these polls. There's big margins of error, even though this one predicted accurately the result of the 2017 election. It was done closer to polling day. And at this stage in 2017, Labour were still behind, but of course we know that they clawed it back and they did actually make some gains and return Theresa May with a minority. There are also other polls out today which claim the race is tightening and Conservative and Labour are closing the gap on the Tories. So we have to caveat this with the fact that this is the most unpredictable election in a generation, but clearly not good reading for Labour. And if they are to try and prevent Boris Johnson from claiming this overall majority, they need to change their strategy. And we're hearing suggestions today that that is what they are planning on doing to try and drain the vote, stop the vote from draining away in these Leave supporting constituencies. But at the moment, Boris Johnson and the Conservatives may well be able to capture.
Right. Could this also be attributed to a question mark that still remains over the clear-cut strategy that the Labour Party will have if it does come to power? Boris Johnson has made it very, very clear, let's get Brexit done. On the other hand, Jeremy Corbyn earlier also, there were indications that they might be keen on holding another referendum. The Labour Party has, of course, gone back and forth as well on its vision for the UK.
Yes, certainly. We're seeing that, as expected in many ways, Brexit is the decider in this election. It was, of course, the reason that it's taking place in the first place. And Labour's strategy so far has been to try and deflect away from Brexit, to try and pull focus onto issues such as the NHS and austerity, try and criticise Boris Johnson for, as they allege, putting the NHS on the table in future trade talks between the US and the UK, which the Conservatives have vehemently denied, and they've stuck to their message of get Brexit done. A simple message, which clearly, if we are to believe these polls, is working. So if Labour are to have any hope of trying to deny Boris Johnson this overall majority, they will have to hatch a new plan to try and focus on these Leave constituencies, which are usually their major strongholds in the north and the Midlands, whereby people do support Leave. They do support leaving the European Union, and we're seeing that Jeremy Corbyn is potentially going to focus on those seats now, and their Brexit strategy is clearly making Leave supporters question whether they actually want to exit the EU and deliver on the referendum results. So they're going to have to make sure that they convince voters that they do. Their policy at the moment, as we know, is that they would renegotiate a deal and then give voters a choice on that deal, a referendum on that. So many people are obviously questioning whether they are committed in that sense to leaving the EU. Labour say they are, and that it's just that they feel like they can get a better deal than Boris Johnson. But it's not to say, of course, that the Conservatives aren't facing a similar issue in reverse. They are as well losing votes to the Liberal Democrats, the Remain supporting party. But of course, as we're seeing today, this is the most unpredictable election in a generation, and there is still very much a long way to go.